Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Ammonize, and this one we have a change to the original schedule, but a show I've been looking forward to for quite a while. I have today with me Brett Hamilton. Now, Brett's somebody I struggle to describe because I can't quite decide yet whether he is an artist who makes furniture or a furniture maker who is an artist. As ever, I'm joined by Lee Rickler, my glamorous technical assistant. You've gone subtle on the lipstick today, Lee. That's good. And, well, let's really get stuck straight in. So, Brett, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business, where you're at the moment.
Okay, I'm Brett Hamilton. My company's Hammies, and where I'm at with my business right now is I've actually just figured out in recent time the answer to your question that you can't figure out, and it's really sunk into me that I'm an artist, and all these things have kind of fallen into place for me once I got a good grasp on that. And so I am definitely an artist. Um, and where I'm at with my company is I put all this time into basically building the foundation of my company, which I consider myself, my production line, and the product. I was actually developing all those things, and the product came, and then the production line came to a point to where I can produce my product efficiently. And once those things and that foundation I can build on top of came into play, the first basically structure I want to build on top of my foundation is my marketing department and my sharing department. And that is pretty much where I'm at today with a product I can produce, bought the equipment that I need so I can photo and get my product out there the way it is. And that's where I'm at.
Okay, excellent. So, what I'll quickly do is let people see the kind of products we're talking about. So, uh, some just a few here. So we have the coffee table, which I think is one of my absolute favourite pieces. Um, and what I love about this is the mixture of the classic and contemporary. It's got a very classical feel, partly because of the material, partly because of this imposing stone classical sort of look to it. But you've got this lovely curvature. You've got these beautiful finishes that just really lift this right into the modern time. Let's look here at the end table, and again we've got that beautiful sort of classic shape to the vase, offset with this lovely beautiful curved top that just really lifts it. And then we have the water feature, and again these curves and this classical mix. It feels like the ancient Greeks have come bang up to date. That's how it feels for me. So let's start with the obvious. Where did the inspiration come? Where did you start with this particular look?
Um, where I started was I was actually down on the Colorado River, um, south of the Grand Canyon areas, and had a little summer home where I'd sit on this beautiful beach and look out over the river. And I think on the website it says, water flowing left to right. And I was looking out across the hills and the beautiful red rock in the hills, and had a nice little rock island out in the middle of the river. Sun was dropping down, and mesquite trees, the lime green mesquite trees, and I just kind of all came together, and I said, I'm going to build that into a piece of furniture. And so built it into a vase, which was the brown of the hills. And then at that time it had a flagstone top. It was color of the red rocks, tan cushions for the color of the for the color of the sand, and then the chairs were done in the same mesquite green. So that's where all my life I've built furniture just for my home and doing artwork around my home. I think the artwork and the furniture kind of collided. And so that's where the first idea came. And then it really came to realization for me that I go out into nature and I um, have scenes on rivers and alpine lakes and all those areas, and I bring in that sense and feel and look of that scene I'm seeing out in nature. And then I combine that with my flair for the ancients. I just love the ancients, the Pueblo, Mayan, Toltec, Aztec, Egyptians, basically all of them. And I love their awesome structures. I just think they're just amazing what they did. And then I love that imaginary part of the ancients because we really don't know what their lifestyle was, what they did every day, and how they lived. And so I kind of throw those around together and then um, give it a story. I like to give all my pieces basically a fictional story of the scene and the Indians dancing around the fire and what they were doing, and kind of bring that all to life through my furniture. And then I like to build from the furniture out. So, I start with my pieces of furniture, now collections of furniture, into building out to the water features and salt lamps, and give them the ancients dancing around and having a great time and kind of a life of peace. So that's kind of where my inspirations all come from. And I like to give them the final piece, I think, is giving them real life, a bonsai tree, salt lamp, fire in a candle, flowing water. Just give them real life. And I think that's the clincher on it.
Yeah, yeah. Adding that fifth element, as the saying goes. We've got a couple of questions from the audience that I kind of will bring in. The first one from Kevin Burns, and his first question is UV protected clear epoxy versus polyurethane clear glossy mini wax finish on wood. What's your preference? What's the difference?
Oh, yeah, big difference. Basically, the epoxy resin that I'm using is very similar to what you see on fiberglass boats, yachts. It's a composite two-part mix that I put on in thicknesses from a 16th of an inch to an eighth of an inch. Um, so that right there, it's just basically it's fiberglass minus the fibered material. So it's the epoxy resin, very durable, and it can be sanded and polished over time for years and years and years. UV part of it keeps it from yellowing because standardly epoxies will yellow over time. My uncle did a table 40 years ago, I believe, a big wood table with pictures on it, inlaid on it, and covered it with epoxy. And 40 years later, it still looks beautiful. So it's an awesome product. It's very thick. Now, as opposed to polyurethanes, which are a very thin, they're very thin layer, excellent for woodwork, excellent indoors, not very good in full exposure to the weather, to setting water, basically standing water on it will cause problems. And I tried it actually at one point in time because doing the tabletops with the epoxy was one thing, but then wrapping, basically if you look at these, and wrapping them in glass is what I call it. Once I got to this, and I was struggling with wrapping them in glass, so I tried the polyurethanes because you can spray it on and it won't run. The problem is I could take my fingernail on it and scratch it off. And and then it'd want to yellow too. It's very hard to find a polyurethane that would not yellow, and then also it wanted to scratch off. So definitely polyurethanes are great for doing woodwork, but not very good for doing these. And then being that these epoxies are what they use on yachts and other things like that, and also you'll see them for fiberglass pools, spas, other products like that, is when I wrap all these in glass, when I finish that off, it made everything submersible in water. So I can take these tables and put them in somebody's pool or I can put them in somebody's jacuzzi, or I'd never be able to get that done with polyurethane. So I
Yeah.
don't know if that was a short answer or a long answer.
Okay, so let's talk processes. How long does it take to manufacture one of the coffee tables? Because obviously your throughput, how much you can deliver, is one of the key things that I need to know when I'm looking at a business.
Okay. I can produce, right now I'm producing about 2 sets a month. I can produce 3 sets. Now that's with chairs. So if we were to take the chairs out of it, it drastically goes up to probably 4 to maybe a little more. I've always had chairs in the mix, but we're looking right about there. And that's just at the start here. So we have some room for everything cleans up as I go.
Yeah. So Scott asks, could you briefly describe your workshop?
I can't describe anything briefly, but any.
Okay,
Okay,
so
the
just give us
brief,
an
the
idea of
short.
your process, your work.
Okay, basically, I'm old school. I love that 1930s to 1950s, maybe early 1960s era, and how things were produced. And a long time ago, being in the fire sprinkler industry, one of the factories I loved the most was the factory that made the old steel coat hangers. Um, and I just loved that old school style where the humans were the computers and we were the automation. So my whole shop and everything kind of follows that 1930s, 1950s kind of theme, which allows me actually in this modern day with modern day materials to really do things that aren't done anymore. So I've taken a lot of old school things and brought them up to speed through new school. Um, I work out, my shop is basically a 2-car garage, and I've built it to flip and flop since I have to do steel, then I have to do concrete, my finishes, then wrapping in glass. I have to make it so it flips one day or one week, do as much as I can of one process, then flip it back to another process, and then flip it again, and it works pretty efficiently. So I've added on an exterior canopy where I do all my concrete work outside now. So um, that's the basics of my shop. Very old school. I even manually draft old school by manually drafting, and then I'll check it on AutoCAD if I feel like it. Um, so that's kind of the process
Okay,
and
so
style, if you want to say style.
we're not dealing with a mass production here. Have you thought about whether, if this company takes off, do you want to start producing in mass? Do you want to take on apprentices and people to work for you to start producing these at so many units per week?
Um, that is one thing that I'm open to. Whether that would happen or not, I don't know, but I've thought that that's something that I would remain open to. Um, and could happen. Of course, right now there's shop size is the main limitation, and then taking it to a larger shop size would actually allow me to produce more tables per month. Um, but as far as being like a large, massive corporation or something like that, absolutely not. I'd want to remain at small, custom kind of atmosphere.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I do think that, you know, let's see. I mean, with your current production methods and times, um, if you sold every unit as quickly as it was made, what kind of standard of living are you looking at?
Um, Very good. It it's very good. It's expensive furniture. Um, and when I look at furniture that's out there, and I've done all my price comparisons, and then I actually love the style of pricing by square inch. Like a lot of artwork's priced per square inch. So I have steel art. Then I have my concrete art, which is similar to sculpting. Then my finishes, the stone finishes, are very similar to painting. And then I can wrap in glass, which we can take it as a form of glass art. And when I combine those pricings together and then look at what other furniture's out there and where mine's at according to it, I'll be able to be very profitable that way.
Okay, so
So if I was to sell everything that I could build a month, yes, I'd be sitting pretty.
okay, so that's not our big headache. The problem then is going to be partly balancing, you know, having enough items for sale, that there's enough business coming through without getting to the point where you know where some restaurants get, where they've got so many things on the menu to try and get a big audience base, that the kitchen process becomes a nightmare because there's so many different things they need to make. The equipment can vary from one piece to another, that kind of thing. um, Realistically, how much diversity can you have in furniture without getting in your own way?
Um, Part of the process is when I actually do the coatings of the vase, the concrete coatings. Um, it allows me to have a lot of flexibility with, I pretty much only build like two vases and then I want to build another style and another style. And that the process that I do allows me to do that without having to change everything. So I can change up my styles a lot. And as I've stumbled on things, I call it stumbling on things, but taking chances and jumping and experimenting, I've stumbled on ways to do a lot of different looks coming up. Like all these looks that I'm doing now are basically a lot of Pueblo Indian style, the cliff dwellings, a lot of that. So, I'll be able to do more styles through the Aztec, Mayan, Indians. That's what I have planned to do next. Um, and because I don't do everything like molds, I don't pour, my vases aren't poured in molds. I don't have to have a lot of storage of molds, so that saves a lot of space. Um, so yeah, I'm going to be able to be custom and change things up and have swivel chairs and the bar chairs and different style chairs without taking up a lot of space, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, yeah. Because it just seems to me at the moment it's quite a small range of pieces that we can see, at least. Literally, I've pulled up three pieces. I think there was a bar set as well, the two chairs and the very high table, and that was it. There were four products, with all the tabletops quite similar, which isn't a bad thing when they're very nice. Um, but I do think for this to grow and for interest to be ongoing, you kind of need to get up to kind of a dozen products altogether. So, what is the process for adding a new product? How does your development time look? How does the design phase look? And how long until you can start producing new pieces?
Um, let's see. As far as design goes, like okay, this piece here, I love symbols too. Part of the ancients, I love vases and symbols. So this will end up being the center of a table one day. Okay, so I start with miniaturization as I'm out working and go from there. Um, and then, a lot of, I use a lot of gadgets to do things. And then a lot of the parts and pieces that I make are made out of wood, and then they collapse, and I can store them almost indexed like a bookshelf. So um, basically, when it's kind of going to be a pretty cool thing to kind of combine these the Aztec and the way I want their tabletops are going to have a lot of straight lines. And 45-degree angles, and how to combine that with some rounds into some vases, and then like my little strength artwork I just showed you. I call it strength artwork, and make those into the same thing for tabletops. Um, and then basically I have this cook stove, and I'm cooking everything on the front. And what I'm cooking right now are all these Pueblo Indians. And then I just have layers and layers behind it of things that I want to get to someday and build that are all completely different. Take my work in more of a modern way, at sometimes towards an Aztec way. So as I clear the burners on the front, those will naturally come forward and have their time to where I can create those. So you're talking, how many items did you say I should have on my menu?
I think a dozen,
A
12.
dozen. Okay.
With a lot of different mixes for different kinds of places. I mean, there's a lot of difference between somebody who has a small but expensive apartment in New York, to somebody who's got a large home out in the wilds, to somebody who's got a hotel. You know, you want there to be something that just looks perfect for everybody's situation. And of course, the space that they live in can vary a lot. Looks like we've got a slight problem with the comment tracker there. Let me pull this up.
No, I'm just writing over my face. Just get over and done with. It's a comment from Robin Holland. Because I'm looking at these, and I kind of agree with Robin. I'm looking at these and I'm thinking they're huge. They're going to cost a fortune to ship, so you're only going to really do them locally. So the question is, is it just a local buy for these? What is the shipping of these pieces like? How heavy are they? Tied into that, also looking on your site, you've got some metalwork there as well. And I would say shipping them, they're much smaller obviously, would be much easier if you've got a bigger global audience. So have you considered, in a sense, mass producing those and making them a specialist item that would be just, you'd sell 2 or 3 or 4 of them each week or each month?
Yes. The idea kind of hit last Christmas, a couple months before Christmas, about the bonsai tree pots and having something smaller and more affordable and easy to ship. So yes, that has come into play. I did sell a couple, not much, on Etsy, but they were just the pots, not with the plates. So I have the pots, the plates, and then I've come up with, I have larger steel artwork for wall art that's going to be coming out. We have power artwork. These are all unfinished, just raw steel shapes that hang on walls. So I do have smaller, easier to ship items that I want to add to the menu.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. But it is one of those things where I do see that you need to have, basically a product for everyone. At the moment, you've got the same tabletop shape for all of the tables, really. And I think we do need a change for people who just don't like that shape but love the finish. They love the idea, but that shape just doesn't work for them because they've got a very angular room and angular furniture. What have we got for them? And there ought to be just a couple of different kind of themes that are central that run through several products in each theme. So just like you've got your power, which has the angular thing, why isn't there, a power table and a power artwork?
Oh, totally. I couldn't agree more. And I have in rough concrete form prototypes of a triangular water feature that can fit in a corner, and also one that's more square, so it steps up and looks more like a pyramid, that are kind of like those I said were on the back burner, just sitting right there getting ready for their time to move forward, and where I can blend those with that top shape too, where it's not just a square, it's offset almost like a footprint of a Mayan city. So different, where I want to incorporate those square shapes and something that'll fit in a corner for people who don't necessarily have room this big for a water feature. and then also one that's square shaped like that steps up like a pyramid that is the same shape as that water feature. So yeah, we got those just hanging right, waiting for their moment in time to move forward.
Excellent. Now, that was where I was going to go next because of your love for the ancient things. You know, I am seeing 4, maybe 5, you know, major ones. Which you've got the very natural inspired one, which is where you're at now. But I think that there's elements of, you know, the Greco-Roman too. You said about Egypt and the Incas, and both of those, of course, have got your square-based pyramids shapes, and you know, for the Native American and some others, triangles featured quite a bit. In fact, in some of the Inca and Mayan culture as well. So having those mixes, I think, will be really important. Just 3 lines, I think, that incorporate different elements of those. Just they tie into the stories that are within us. They tie into our stories, and I know that's something already that I can feel is part of what you love to do.
Oh yeah. I think having a story that goes along with it is huge. Like the genie tables I have sitting behind me, that they're a 3 foot tall table, is where that whole story kind of jumped out at me when I was putting them together and thinking of the stories of genies. And like I Dream a Genie, I loved watching that show growing up, and then brought them to life through giving them a story. And there's Shira and Lil, and giving them their name and their own island, which is Madrona Island, and um, bringing them to life. So yeah, I I think you can take it a long ways when you start adding fictional stories along with real life things.
With the fact that you make all this yourself, with the fact that it's you know, working with the materials you do and then glassing over the top, does this mean that you could actually embed quite a few things in the surface? Are there different things that you could actually embed in the tables that would be very visible, but you'd still have a really nice glass finish?
Oh yes, yes. Anything from even pictures. You can embed paper. You can embed steel. I have some accidental ones on a few pieces where there's little flakes of metal from metalworking that got embedded in there, and I glossed over them, and I'm like, hey, what's that shiny piece there? So yeah, little shiny pieces of steel. They have different metal flakes that you can mix in, so you can have some sparkle. Um, I've seen other people's work too, where they embed shells, or just let your imagination go crazy that they could be embedded in. I mean, I could take a piece of my steel work and say give it some nice sanding and some polishing to it, and actually embed that in and cover it. So you can take it just about anywhere you want to.
That is
Yes.
so important, because we're talking about art, and of course the artist should always have commissions, and that's the one thing I'm not quite seeing yet on the website, and we'll come to the website next. But it is one of the things that's missing on the website, is that ability to really show, look, I will make this piece of art that tells your story. And I think it's really important that on your website you are showing the stories that you're telling. Give us the history of how this piece came about, or why this piece has these colours. But then take that a step further by showing how you tell your story. Have a section on your site where they commission, they can talk about their story, their heritage, what's important to them, their birthstone, or things that just matter to them, so that you could embed coins from the year of their birth, or postage stamps, or newspaper clippings that really mattered to them, and that told part of their story. And I think that is somewhere where you would see not only your items really selling, but also you're able to charge that bit extra when you are personalizing all of those kind of things. you know, you're charging an extra $50 to $100 for anything that's kind of along those lines, but it's suddenly so much more worthwhile. Your furniture is beautiful, but when it can tell my story as well as your story, I think that's where the magic happens.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. You know, I think it's I originally started out wanting to be a custom furniture builder, and then I started building all my own pieces too. So I feel it's important to be able to build things for other people that they want. One of my customers had a crazy rug with a lot of shapes in it, and they wanted a splitting a cell, like a splitting cell shaped tabletop. So I was able to give them that top that blended very well with their rug. Um, so I think it's a combination of that, being able to build those custom things for people's homes, go into their homes and build something that matches their stuff, but also build things that have been personally inspired. So I think there's a blend there.
Yeah. Okay. So.
And noting that, right? Note that on the website.
Yes. All of
Make
these.
sure people know.
So let's come to the website and let Lee Rickler off his leash.
Oh, you don't want to hear this one. There is some good news.
That's why I'm smiling.
Yeah, there is some good news. One thing I would do on the tabletops is put a chessboard in there, or snakes and ladders, or scale electrics even, so you could use them as games tables. So on the website itself, well, it's one of those ones where this is totally fine. You know, you've done it yourself. That's cool. Not a problem with that. It's hosted and it's iPage hosted by them, and it's one of their builders. Yeah, that's fine. The problem with that is that, of course, it's massive, you know, bloated code that slows everything down. You haven't really got much control over it. You know, there's tables in there, there's old code in there. It just, on the back end of it, it just looks ugly. I checked out the domain and the page authority and things like that. Out of 100, you scored 1. There's no inbound links, there's no Google Analytics, and only the homepage I could find was indexed, which obviously doesn't help one bit. That's all the bad news. The good news, you know, it is clean. It's not blacklisted or anything like that, so there's no viruses on it or anything like that at all. Scrolling down, we've got my first impression was, yes, I love these pieces. How do I contact you? Well, it's in your logo at the top. There's a logo piece, as it were, but it's got your old MAC address. Again, it doesn't make it look like a confident company. It just looks like somebody just set something up. There are ways around this for the site itself. You know, I'd get a host an account somewhere, one-click install of WordPress or Drupal or Joomla, whichever you like to play around with. Makes it dead easy. It takes 5 minutes to set up. And then you can either go off and get a company to build it for you, or you can just, as I say, use a one-click install and then go off to Theme Forest and buy a theme if you like. We're talking about just the front end of it looking good, as opposed to what it is now. To me, I would split all the pieces into categories: tables, chairs, water features, and then sub-taxonomies as well, like wood, metal, concrete, those kind of things. A lot of websites these days, especially when they're WordPress-based, they've got sliders on them, and I particularly don't like them at all. But in this case, I think it would work really well if you had a slider of all the latest pieces going across as well. Clicking through to the pages which have those pieces on. Lots of information about those pieces, the backstory behind them, how they were made, what materials you use, those kind of things as well. One thing I would love to see on there is blog posts on the creation of the pieces. So you've got a new piece coming up, you know, in 2 weeks' time. How are you starting off with that? What's your inspiration for the piece itself, and how are you sourcing the materials? And I'll shut up from there. I've got loads more stuff.
Well, there's some great ideas there, and you'll probably want to watch the video back to grab all of them, because Lee goes at a fair pace, don't you, Lee?
Yeah.
But
I've got another 4 sheets here.
Dish it out, mate. Dish it out. You know.
Yeah.
Colours. What are these? Are they on your site now? You've got a page called colours, but what are they? Are they finishes? Are they colours you can have? I'm not quite sure what they are. What I would love to see on the pieces themselves, you've got a lot of close-up shots. I'd like to see blown-up views, so I can see them, from afar, close-up on all the details as well, and if possible, 360 rotations, so I can see what it looks like on the other side. And video, perhaps even. Where else are we? And also, you haven't got Pinterest or Instagram accounts. The Pinterest and Instagram are crying out for your items on there. And that'll do for me for now. I'll post some more stuff later on.
Yeah, we've got some excellent tips there. I'll just bring up a message from Tim here. He says, building things that are personally inspired and still custom to the individual you make it for is probably the biggest thrill an artist can experience. And that's why, like you, he enjoys doing commissions. And I think, that is one of the things that we're not seeing that on the site. There's nothing there telling us that you love doing commissions or that, you even want commissions. There's nothing encouraging that. And I think that's one of the most important things to get on there. You need to get the storytelling of your pieces on there and really explain where you get your inspiration from, because connecting with you is where art lives. Just as I know you watched the show where I appeared on Tim's show, and we were talking about the story of the art and how you connect with it is really the value of the piece, and that's exactly what you need to be doing with all of this furniture, is telling us the story behind it and letting us become part of that story by buying the piece that we've seen created, or by commissioning our own and really getting into the story that way. That's what adds so much extra value. So
Oh yeah. So basically, yeah. And when I first did the website and finished those pieces, it was one of the most frustrating things I went through, trying to capture these pieces with the old Canon snapshot and get good pictures. And then I went with just my basic writing and not my full journal. And now coming down the line later and hearing what you had to say in a few shows that I saw with you, Tim, I think I saw one with Stephanie Sims and Carmen, I think her name's Carmen, that really y'all talked about the power of writing and journaling and putting that into sites. And I think I need to take that step. I already took the step to get a camera to where I wouldn't be dealing with those frustrations. And then when I went back and looked at my site, and I'm like, wow, I was very generic with my writing.
Yeah, and you do need to be telling the story in writing. Don't be afraid to use video blogging as well. You're in the workshop, you're letting something dry, or you're waiting for something to mix up. Get that camera on, have it, ready, so that you can just hit the record button when the inspiration takes you. Talk about where you are. Talk about, how you're excited about the next part of the process and what you've just done. Don't be afraid to overshoot video. You can edit down. It's a lot easier to have too much and just take out what you need than to try and, generate the footage you need when you need it, because sometimes just the inspiration isn't there right at that moment. So, that's definitely one of my tips. Now that you've got the video set up, definitely start doing more video blogging.
Okay. Yeah, and that's another thing Lee mentioned, was the Instagram and the Pinterest and all these social media platforms, as you say, that I have never really experienced or done anything with, as far as sharing the work and having those linked to the websites. And when Scott got me to come on to Google Plus, I had just started learning what social media was. So I think I need to learn those things and link them to the site.
Yeah. Certainly Pinterest, as Lee mentioned, is one that you should be including. And Frederick in the audience has said that you can go to Pinterest if you review your photos to let them speak more about your product. where your product is so visual, it's so artistic, there's more to it as well. There's the story behind, but you really, Pinterest is built for you. It's a network where interior design is doing very well anyway, because it's such a visual medium. So it's certainly a place you should be on. You can catch a couple of well, the Manly Show often covers Pinterest in detail, so I'd certainly have a look at that if you haven't already, and that will help you come up with a strategy for using Pinterest. Frederick adds as well, to change your items menu, instead of doing it by item, end table, coffee table, do it by collection. And this ties in precisely with what we were talking about earlier about where you've got your curves and your squares and your angles. You know, you might have a Greco-Roman, you might have an Aztec and an Egyptian collection, you know, as separate collections. Show all the pieces collectively and individually within that kind of collection, and I think that would do very, very well for you indeed.
And that would tie into like taxonomies as well: wood, metal, concrete. As you say, you know, Greco and Roman, whatever the case may be. I might be searching for a piece that, you know, is Roman in design, made out of wood, for example. So you just put that into a search, and then you have 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces come up.
And Sheila Hensley in the audience has said that she thinks the video blog is a great idea. It would be so interesting to watch and hear what you're thinking as you work, and I think that's absolutely true. Again, it's all part of telling the artist's story, telling the story of the piece, because if I know where that piece has come from, if I've seen it being made, I'm suddenly so much more attached to it and so much more wanting it, or wanting my own variant thereof. So is this all kind of making sense so far?
Oh, totally. You know, every time a comment pops up, like the collections, well, that's what I've started adding on to, is I have collections of work now. So it's just not one standalone table anymore, like a coffee table. I have a coffee table, a genie table, water features, pots and plate setups. They're all collections now. And then you gave me an idea about video and out in the shop to show the detail of the steelwork going together. And I'd love to do that and add in video and add more and add the journaling and the collections. And I think Lee brought up the colors pages, where those are all my first sample boards where I actually learned to do the finishes on, but showed the colors and the textures, where I can take those pages now and replace them with more of the work I've done that shows colors and textures and the type of stones that I can do. So there's a whole lot I can do to this site that's everybody's kind of hit on it here and there.
Yeah. So I'm going to put up Tim's comment again. For an artist, social media is very difficult. For the dedication it needs to be effective. Figure out when you are most creative and make a schedule around that for your social media capitalization. So there can be stages at a project. You know, is it as you just finished something, or is it more as you're just about to start something that you feel particularly creative, you feel particularly expressive about it? If you tie that into your schedules in the first place, you'll be that bit more effective. And Frederick points out that you need to know what market you're going for, the art, luxury, or other. I think you've actually got several here, because I think some of your pieces are very much suitable for corporate art. And so many offices now, especially around the lobby area and places like that, they want artistic pieces. They want to have the right impression, the right feel. And I think you've got some possible work there too. I think doing corporate commissions could be very successful for you, because you can customize, because you can embed their logo into a table or into a large planter, something, you know, that they could have in their lobby that has their brand. I think could do very, very well in a certain class of high-end office.
And that one I've never thought of, but I'm putting that on my list. Yeah, that's I think I read an article a while back where they were talking about different corporations and some of the amount of money that they'll spend in their artwork throughout their lobbies and lobby areas. But yeah, I like that.
One of the tricks there can be to pick a particularly well-known company or an organization that's doing something very important, to give them a freebie. But of course, you make sure it gets into the press. You make sure that that's your local news story, and if you can get it into some of the bigger news stories, you know, if you did an Android-shaped phone for, you know, shaped cable for Google, and got that out there, suddenly that makes it, you can have the same artist do yours that Google did for their office. Even though you gave it away, it's still in people's minds. You are the artist that did the table that's in Google's lobby. And that kind of connection can sometimes do very good things. So don't be afraid to do that, to push that commission side. So let me see. The thing with the social media is, don't feel you have to do every platform. Pick the ones that are going to work for you. Pinterest, really, really useful for you because it's so visual. I think G+, because it's got the collaboration going on, is always a very strong one. And because your works are something that people interested in interior design are going to be interested in, Facebook is still actually one of the better ones for you for that aspect, because that's the kind of network where people are looking for ideas when they're talking about, you know, their own interior design. And don't be afraid to give away some ideas of home projects that people can do for themselves, to position your thinking, your artistic side. If lots of people appreciate you as an artist enough to emulate, obviously that puts up the value of owning a piece of art by this highly emulated artist. You know, you're becoming a thought leader in the art space and interior design space, and of course that pushes up the value of the pieces you do. I would say that, you know, probably 3 social media places is all you're going to want to do, and all you should need to do. You need to focus on where the results are. Facebook is the one that may take the most time out of that, because it takes time to get into the groups. They filter so much these days that it can take a while to get there, but I think it would do very well. And of course you can link your Pinterest to your Facebook page or to your G+ profile, or even both, or you can link it to the website. At this time I'd probably say the website is the hub, so everything should link to there, but don't be afraid to also promote on there the Facebook group and the G+ profile, and have something slightly different in each one. Lee, you have a comment there?
Yeah. Separates are going all over my face. Frederick Pierron again, concentrating on the photography. And if you don't have much money, that's fine. It's not a problem. Get a student in, do a photography, set them up as doing like a short piece on the photography, to take the photos for you, and maybe even write some content as well.
And Kristin offers, many chiropractic offices search out Feng Shui practitioners to help them with their design, and she thinks that the pieces you've already got would be absolutely ideal for some of those kind of things. And I'm sure that if you were actually targeting that market and thinking of embedding some of the elements of Feng Shui, that would do very, very well indeed as well. Yeah, and that's something that I think is a great idea.
Yeah, I agree too. I've heard different high-end spas from people too that would like that Feng Shui. So
okay, so let's start looking at how to get this practically into a plan moving forwards. Obviously, the very first place to start, the website. You need to get that extra content. You need to get those stories up. You need to get a process ready for video blogging, and you need to think about how you are going to cover the stories that you need to cover, which is the story of where the art is coming from, the story of how you put it together, and don't be afraid to put your own story and your own background into why these things matter to you, where you're coming from, what you're saying with your message into the site. Those things need to be there. This site needs to have that artistic feel and give us a connection with the works, with your processes, and of course with you as the artist. So that's step number one, is to work on that website. That will be the underpinning of everything else you do. The better the site is, the more people are going to link to it, the stronger it is in search. From there, definitely start to bring out the social media. Once the site is strong, you can tie the social media into the site more effectively, because you're able to. I'm working on this piece this week, and it has a story which I covered on my blog here. Short post, but it's linking to your blog, and people can go across there, see the site, understand the story, see the piece, and think about doing a commission. Certainly, you know, that kind of storytelling always needs to be around, because art is in the connection, art is in the story is what comes straight through to us. From there, once the site is very strong and you've started the social media, I think you will be seeing the traction. The thing after that would be to much more start promoting the different lines. So we've got our different collections, and then I would follow the corporate. So that's kind of, as we've been going through these things, that's the order I would put them in. I'd do the corporate last, because although it's potentially the very big win, because there are some serious commissions in that space, I think let's get the basic products and the basic story right first, and then we've got the basis to build everything else on. Does that all make sense?
Oh, totally. Totally, yeah. Start with the website, and I like the idea of linking everything to that, since that's my nucleus that I have right now, and expand out. And one of the first things that I did purchase for my marketing was a nice camera, so I can get some great shots now, and it also has a great video feature too, to where I can run 20-some minutes of video and start adding those things in. So yeah, definitely, I'm there with you on starting with that site and then expand into these social media platforms. And I've never really looked into a blog, and you know, so those are things I need to look into.
Yeah.
And then also, you know, that I am using a drag and drop site, and what programs are available that would suit me, and building a website that's works better, that I can have it be elegant. I think that's one thing I want, is I want my site to look really elegant.
This is one of the ones where I'd say WordPress has some significant advantages, because it gives you a lot of that very easy to work system. Basically, if you can write a document in Word, you can operate WordPress. It really is that kind of simple. The theme, getting the theme built for you is the tricky part. You need to talk to somebody like oh, I don't know, who does themes, Lee? Who could...
I think I know a guy.
But basically, getting somebody who understands your story, understands your message, is going to take the time to build you a theme that then makes WordPress look as elegant and beautiful as the artworks itself, is where this is going to sort of come from. Further to that, the next stage after all of that is to look at building up and, you know, starting to take on an apprentice, because it's great. Let's fill your workload first to a certain extent. But the problem is, if you haven't thought of how to scale early on, it's almost impossible to add it in later. Because by the time you're thinking, oh God, I can't put this off any longer, you are now too busy to train an apprentice. So you have to build this in at the start. You have to understand that there will come a point where you need to employ an apprentice and pay an apprentice's wages, but still have the time to train him and be funding this. So you kind of need to be building up that level of investment, that investment capital, to bring in the next employee quite early on, so that it's there for when you need it. so that you're not having to turn down work just as, a trend comes in, you're suddenly the hottest thing in the market, you can't supply it at that kind of speed, and by the time you get there, that trend has passed, because, it can be a year or 2 years. So you do need to think ahead to this kind of thing.
Yeah, on touching like that, I didn't, when you brought up having an apprentice, I didn't really expand on this, but the whole shop, the way I have it set up now, 2-car garage, exterior canopy, it's basically built to blow up one set. So everything is built right now, squished in to flip and flop, is built to expand out. So where I flip and flop it, it's built basically all the machinery so everything has its own place in a larger shop and facility. And then as far as the apprentice, where I'm open to that, what I do is when I work and I'm building all these things, I have my folder of all my data that I do. So I have quantities and amounts, and a lot of times while I'm out working and working on things, I almost talk to myself like I'm teaching an apprentice what I have and what I'm doing along the way. So that if I had an apprentice come in, I have a folder that's all structured to where they could follow the system. It's basically the system of how the production works. So as I go, I'm gearing it towards that.
That's really good. And don't forget that, of course, when you've got that video set up in the workshop, that enables you to actually walk somebody through the process as well, so that they can sit through the video, understand what's going on while you're still actually working and earning the money while they've come in. So excellent points. I think you're ahead of the curve a little bit there, but certainly it is one of those things. Do understand you are going to want to gear up at some time, because the end tables, the coffee tables, you've done the majority of the work there, except when a really great commission comes in and that requires the artistic process. A lot of the rest of it now, it's somewhat repetitive. That's the ideal thing to be passing on to an apprentice and freeing up your time to do the stuff that the artist needs to do. But don't be afraid to, of course, have the little signature in each piece. So something that really does, to get to that high end, every artist needs his signature. There needs to be something that is uniquely you, that's your trademark in every piece.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to bring up another comment from Frederick here. He's on fire today. He says he'd make connections with fashion and interior design magazines. Certainly, once your website is ready, this is another part of social media you want to be doing, is that you want to look for interior design bloggers and design bloggers generally, and offer them a story about one particular piece coming together, or see if they're interested in featuring it. They often are. Sometimes you can lend them a piece for a photo shoot or whatever, and that of course can help again get you in front of a bigger audience.
Yeah, I do like the idea of getting into that design area with the interior designers, and now that you said magazines, yeah, that's great. Great stuff.
I think one thing that I'd add to that is, don't be afraid to look for people who are interior designers, people who are doing a lot of work. There are a few here on G+. Don't be afraid to connect with them, so that they know that if they ever want a piece commissioned, that they can get in touch with you. And have a referral fee where you'll split some of the commission with them if they're in already. We've got a guy who does fine art finishing and plastering. He does all kinds of work in that kind of area. Well, he's already in on a lot of expensive interior design projects, so it could well be that they want something else to go with this, and that could be somewhere you're getting some really great leads. And Frederick is including in that you maybe talk to some of the architects and people like that. So don't be afraid to network. Get the website finished first, because that's your calling card, that's your business catalog kind of thing. That's everything you want to know about me whenever you've got time to look it up is there. then you can connect with people knowing that they can dig through the story and see whether they're interested much more easily. We're in the very final moments. We're a tiny bit over time, but I think we had so much to cover, that's not a problem. Brett, are there any last questions before we finish up for this week?
No, I don't have any last questions. I think my path is pretty laid out right here.
Yeah.
And I know where I need to start. So, you know, I think we got that.
Excellent. And I know we have given you months of work in getting, everything on the site and the stories and things like that. It's going to take a while, but hopefully the audience will have you G'd up. We've got a ton of comments in the stream, so I know we'll all be sort of diving into those later, but don't be afraid to reach out and use social media to give you that rush. It's better than a sugar high. It really is sometimes when people get a project and you need a little bit of a lift, it's there. So don't be afraid to use that side of social media.
Okay.
Lee, any wrap-up points this week?
Yeah, for Brett, I would go back and watch this all over again. Pick one and focus on it, and just crack ahead with that until you're happy. And then put the others to the side, because otherwise you'll be 16 different places at once, and then nothing will get done. But other than that, a lot of good ideas, especially from the audience.
Yeah. Well, I think we've covered a lot this week. I know that we'll have plenty to go into for the deep dive next week. But I wanted to thank you for coming on and sharing your business with us. Hopefully we've given you plenty to do, and you'll be cursing us sometimes, because if that's not happening, we haven't given you enough to do. Brett, thank you so much. Been a real pleasure. Lee, what are you up to this week?
I've got a hell of a load of work on, as usual, which is good, and most of it is hanging around on G+.
Okay, well, I've got TNT Bootcamp coming up tomorrow, and of course then Bill and Ammon's Hangout. But the one I'm looking forward to most is next week's follow-up, because I think we've got some great audience questions to dive into as well. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.